God uses ordinary people. And I love that because I am an ordinary person. And since the beginning of time, God has used ordinary people. And if you just take a look through the scriptures, you can find so many people who are just ordinary. But God used them for his glory. And the first verse that really kind of got me thinking about this was in the book of Acts, chapter 4, verse 13. The members of the council were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men with no special training in the scriptures. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. They were ordinary. They didn't have any special training or qualifications or gifts that would even lend themselves to doing something like this, but they were making a difference. They were doing incredible things, but they were just ordinary. God used them because they were ordinary and because they said yes. Now, look at this. God tells Moses, hey, here's what I want you to do. And Moses says, oh, hey, I'm not very good with words. I've never been good with words, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. And God said, I don't care. You can do this. God uses ordinary people. David, the young shepherd, insignificant, he was out tending the sheep and his brothers were on the front lines fighting a battle. Who does God use? David trots out there with his sling and his rocks, and he slays Goliath. The point is, God uses ordinary people. Gideon, and again, he's pushing back. Oh, but Lord, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my whole family. So I am the least of the least. God, how can you use me? And yet, God uses ordinary people. And what about Esther? She was just an ordinary Jewish woman, but she became queen. And here's what Mordecai said to her: if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? God could have used someone else, but he used Esther because she said yes. And I would say the same thing for you. Who knows if perhaps you were made for such a time as this? Are you doubting your gifts and abilities, who you are? Do you feel insignificant or maybe just kind of self-conscious, or you lack confidence? God doesn't care. God wants to use you. And the reason I'm so jacked up about this is because that's who I am. I have always been one who's been more of an introvert, been more like, I can't do this. I can't do it. Or I'm not capable of doing it. And God says, no, you are. Go do this. And that's really all he wants, is for us to say yes. Case in point, let's look at Mary. She was a young, seemingly insignificant girl from Nazareth. The angel comes to her and says, hey, you're going to be the mother of the Lord. And usually people will push back, like some of these folks that you've heard about, saying, oh God, I can't do this. You picked the wrong person. I'm not your guy. I'm not your girl. But Mary says, I am the Lord's servant. Let everything you've said happen to me. Lord, help us to have that same attitude. Lord, I am your servant. Let everything you said to me come to pass. Let everything that you want to do in me come to pass. Use me. Whatever that looks like. Whatever you want to do, just use me. And God will use you powerfully. Let's continue. Peter, he's a fisherman. God wants a fisherman on his team. Let's talk about Joseph. Joseph, he was a prisoner. He was sold into slavery. He was a prisoner. He could have stayed in prison for the rest of his life. But God had better plans for Joseph. And he ended up becoming a powerful leader in Egypt and eventually saved his family from famine. Let's talk about Rahab. She was a Canaanite prostitute. She helped the Israelite spies and was instrumental in Israel's victory at Jericho, and she later became part of the lineage of Jesus. God uses everyone who says yes, everyone who just submits themselves to God and says, use me, Lord. Andrew, he was an ordinary fisherman, Matthew, he was a corrupt, despised tax collector, and yet God said, all right, you're a creep, but I know that I can use you if you allow me to, and he did. Let's talk about Priscilla and Aquila. They were tent makers, and they played a significant role in growing the church, the early church. The Samaritan woman at the well, she was an outcast in her society, and she became one of the first evangelists in meeting Jesus, after meeting him, leading many people to believe. And let's talk about the little boy with his lunch. He had the 5 loaves and 2 fish. The child said yes and submitted his lunch to Jesus, and Jesus multiplied it far beyond anyone could ever imagine, and he was glorified because of that. And it was because of that little boy's obedience. So I don't know where you are right now. I don't know if you feel like you're not enough. And even though people say you can do this, you still doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself. All you have to say is yes. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anyone special. You don't have to have special qualifications. All you have to do is say yes. God, yes. I don't know what you want to do through me and in me, but I say yes to that. God wants to use you. You can do this. You can't do it on your own, because remember, you're an ordinary person. But if you allow God to work in your life, if you say yes to him, he will work in your life. I promise. He promises. You can do it. You can do it. You do not doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself, because I know you are doubting yourself right now, because I have doubted myself. My whole life I've doubted myself. But don't doubt yourself. I don't care. I don't care if you can't do this. I don't care if you can't do that. I don't care if you don't have an education. I don't care if you, I don't care. God wants to use you. God will use you, and he will be glorified through you. You can do this.